Recast City. It's in front of you, not in front of me. And I'm really excited to be here today because I've had a chance to talk to Deborah about this space for a while, and I am excited to get to see Makerspace Connecticut here today. So when I talk about the work that I do, I often am talking to local elected officials, real estate professionals, nonprofit leaders, small business owners, and makers. Do we have any of those in the room today? Do you fit any of those things? Students included. You're all makers. Because I think it's important from the very beginning to talk about how do we get something done. And the reason that Deborah introduced me with a line about being impatient to make things happen now is because I've spent a lot of years working on long-term plans. I don't know if anybody's been involved with a long-term plan. They're awesome, they're very important. We have to know where our North Star is, but we have to figure out what we have to do now to get there. And that's what we usually forget, because in fact, we're dealing with a lot of bad news. And I'm gonna talk about the bad news first, before I talk about how we get somewhere else. We have a lot of people leaving a lot of places in this country. A lot of places have fewer adults there than they did before. We have something called a brain drain in a lot of towns and cities. People are growing up and leaving and not coming back because there's no opportunity for them there, and there's nothing that ties them to the place. We also have the highest amount of income inequality we've ever had at any basis that we're tracking, historically. And that is an enormous problem for a whole host of reasons. And third, we see that vacant properties, so it could be a vacant house or it could be a commercial building that's sat vacant for a long time, impacts the property values all around it, which brings down how people perceive a place, how much they spend money in that place, what kind of businesses get opened in that place, and a lot of things around our community. So we think about people leaving places, that huge difference in inequalities in income, and that vacancy just keeps depressing it more and more. We're in this vicious cycle in a lot of places. So we need a different model. And what I'm going to tell you is first about what we need to leave, and then about the new model we need to pursue. Because when we do build a new model, we can create an inclusive economic opportunity on our main street or in our downtown, and we can really take our community back. And that's what I talk about in the work that I do. It's really about how do we re-own our own community? How do we feel proud of where we are from? And I hope you all do too already. But there are a lot of places in the country where people feel like they're stuck there. They're not there by choice, they're there because they're stuck there. And I believe that everybody has a right to live at a place where they feel proud of what they're doing and they feel proud of their community. So a little bit about me. I can't take this with me. So I come from, this little town called Washington, D.C. My mother sewed the dress that you can see on the left of the picture. She sewed dresses, she quilted, she painted. She always said, the work I did was okay, right? Look at that dress. You fast forward many years later, I worked in the smart growth world, community redevelopment. How do we make downtowns come back to life? It's hard to remember now, but before the last recession, nobody really was talking about downtowns, and that wasn't that long ago. But that's the work that I did. And the other picture is when I had the opportunity to give a TEDx talk, which was a pretty exciting time, talking about the economic power of great places. How are we building great places? And that's really the focus of what I still do. 5 years ago, almost exactly, I launched Recast City. And I launched Recast City because through my research and my experience working with communities all over the country, I learned that there was this missing piece. And the missing piece is makers and manufacturing. And I call it small-scale manufacturing because it's businesses that are making some kind of tangible good. You can hold it in your hand, you can replicate it, and you can package it. And they are small enough that they fit into the fabric of our community. They can be in a storefront, they can be next to a house because they're modern manufacturing. And in fact, they provide a ton of benefits that we'll talk about in a little while. So I work all over the country, I sit down at tables, and it was very interesting to me to hear Lee talk about this because it is all about trust. It is all about the trust or the lack of trust in our communities And I don't think we've fallen into a habit, but I think we didn't notice how much we only talk to the same people. And that if we're actually going to rebuild our economies, we have to talk to the people we don't know. And that's across the board, and this is one way to get there. So places are really stuck in a default model. There are 3 different ways that we're really stuck, and I'm going to talk about them just briefly. Because what we did is we ended up saying, even though we've in many ways said we're not just going to build in suburbia, we're going to rebuild downtown in those places, we somehow decided they were all going to look the same, which is really not effective. So what we're going to talk about is how do we ditch this default model, how do we invest in our communities in a better way, and then where does small-scale manufacturing fit in to help us create that strong economy in a thriving place? So first, economic development. It really is stuck in the 80s, and not just with the bad hair, although I loved my hair in the 80s. We have an economic development model that most cities are still using that is stuck from at least 30, 40 years ago. Right? And it is just shocking to me with how much our economy has changed and how much the theory of economic development is still old. Most places are still chasing big business. You might live in a place that is chasing big business, right? We're only going to save our local economy if we recruit some big business to come to town and save us. They don't say it that way, but that's what they mean. And we also, in that outreach, let's call it nicely, we sell our future, because to do the recruitment, we're giving away tons of dollars now and tons of tax money in the future. And so we're selling our future in this effort to recruit some big business that's going to save us, but really is only going to come for maybe a decade and then leave again. And in reality, even those incentives that we're offering, they're only really incentives for high-income jobs. So we're looking at tech jobs. We're looking at jobs that are accessible to some, but not everybody. And we have to acknowledge that that's what most of those programs are doing. And because of this, we have people and places that are getting left behind. And I can't say it in any other way. We are leaving people and places behind. We are saying implicitly and often explicitly, you don't matter as much as somewhere else matters. Or someone else. Right? We see this all over the country. We have these vacant buildings. We have main streets that have completely been boarded up. We have money going only to tech, right? This is the world of Silicon Valley. This is tech is king. We will do anything to recruit a tech business and get investment for it, as opposed to lots of other businesses that might provide good middle-income jobs that are grown from within the community. And we have this crazy thing called opportunity zones, which is a whole other talk. I'm not even going to take it on today if you're familiar with what it is, but it more or less is a combination of a land grab and make rich people more rich on top of whatever they're doing. There could be a way to use it for good. But opportunity zones really are, I don't even know what to say about them right now. They're a problem. Let's leave it at that. They're a problem. They have a lot of potential problems with them. So then we also have these huge divisions. We have a huge wealth gap in our country, and we can't deny that it's there. And there's lots of really interesting research that says that it's not just about the historic injustices, it's actually about how much people are making in their income now. And that if we can help and we can find ways to help people raise their incomes now and get better paying jobs now, we start addressing that racial wealth gap moving forward, as opposed to it widening it out. And then we have this third really weird thing that I honestly am not quite sure how it happened. As much as I love everybody I know in the real estate community, not everyone, a lot of people I know in the real estate community I think are only focused on doing good for their community. Our local real estate developers really want to do something good in their community. But we went from, let's build something in suburbia that looks the same everywhere. I won't fall off the stage probably. We went from suburbia, cookie cutter houses, strip malls, right? You could drive down a corridor and you look like you're anywhere, We went from that to, well, we have a downtown and we're going to do mixed use. Let's make it all mixed use. And it all ends up looking the same, just like this building. And so we end up with this weird vanilla real estate, even in urban areas now, where you have a coffee shop, you have the juice bar, you have the CrossFit, and you have the same existence of you don't know where you are. There is nothing unique to that place about it. And at the same time, historically, really over the last 50 years, we've spread retail like peanut butter, like really expensive peanut butter, all over the place. Right? We spread it in malls that have emptied back out. This building is glorious, and I'm thrilled that it has a new use and a new life to it. But even now, in most places, as areas are getting rezoned, they're saying mixed use, you must have ground floor retail. Where realistically, most places can't support retail on their ground floor, and we need really specific places and needs for it. So we have this weird, expensive peanut butter going up, and then we have approval processes across the country for development that are super unpredictable, super long. And development is always going to be political and emotional, but it's too easy for a small group of people to influence versus really getting out and talking to people about the future of a community and what they want to see there. So I want to just take a step and remind you, investment and growth is a good thing to me, right? We need to invest in places. We need to regrow a lot of our economies, but we need to do it in a way that is really intentional and with purpose. And I talk about purpose a lot. Mark and I were talking about this beforehand, about when we go forward to do something, whatever it is, and I think about this in the work that I do when I'm reaching out to small-scale manufacturing businesses, I could just say, I'm going to talk with any small-scale manufacturing business. But in reality, to me, hopefully not just to me, in reality, if we're doing outreach to a business community, to a group of business owners, we need to make sure that the group of business owners we engage from the start represents the demographic diversity of that community. And if we're not doing that, we're not doing economic development. And somehow we said that wasn't a problem for decades, and I don't really know how, but I talk about doing this with purpose so that we know who should benefit and why we want them to benefit and the outcome we want to achieve in every one of the things that we invest in. Right? We talk about government investment and what are we getting out of it, but we rarely talk about the specifics of the purpose and the benefit and what we're trying to change in our community. So there is a new path forward, and this is what I work in a lot of places about. We need to invest in the people who live there, invest in that place, but with those people. We need to create a new structure to support scale and invest both in the place and the people. And we need to think long-term, but act now. And I'm sure that last one comes as no surprise because I keep talking about being impatient. And there are 3 secrets to this, and they're really not secrets. Place. So when I talk about place, I'm not talking about like where am I standing at the moment, but I'm talking about the place that is, for instance, downtown Hartford. The place that we are is really key to economic strength. If you think about, if you have a chance to drive somewhere on vacation or travel somewhere on vacation, what draws you is often some natural environment, right? You go hiking, you can go do something outside, or a place. We go visit cities in other parts of the state or in other parts of the country because we want to see what that place is like. And so having that place be strong is an essential part of economic strength. It also has to be unique. It can't look like everywhere else. This building is amazing because it looks like nothing else around that I've seen in a long, long time, right? And so things that are unique about us are in fact the gold, and small-scale manufacturers are part of what's unique about us. And then social connections. There's tons of research that shows that when we have disasters, natural disasters, all sorts of disasters, it's actually the social connections between business owners that predict whether or not they're going to survive it. If they have strong social connections within their business community, they more or less barter as long as they need until they can get back on their feet. And the people who do not have strong social connections, more often than not, will go out of business. So we have to look at place, how to be unique, and then those social connections as part of our new economic reality. And small-scale manufacturing makers are a part of this. So what do I talk about when I talk about small-scale manufacturing? These are, to me, something that you all might be very familiar with, but is a hidden gem. There's a missing piece in the way we do pretty much everything out there with economic development and real estate development. Small-scale manufacturing businesses give us 5 major benefits. And these are the 5 pieces that I was talking about earlier. They give us a reason to gather. Has anybody, I don't know if any of your holiday markets have opened up yet in DC, they're just about to all launch. Has anybody been to a pop-up artisan market, holiday market? Yeah. So this is one that was in Baltimore. It's called REM Fest. It's a neighborhood festival. People come out for the food and the music, but the booths of local businesses that produce something were packed. Because people know that those businesses are their neighbors, they're people from their city, and they're really excited to support them. And so those vendors, who I call small-scale manufacturers, because they're making some kind of tangible good, those vendors become the reason to gather and a reason to be proud of the community. It also allows us to build an inclusive community of business owners. Like I was talking about before, that we need to do it purposefully, but we in fact see product creation in every different population we have in our city. People might be doing it as a second or a third job, right? They might be, in my community, there are a lot of home-based businesses making tamales, right? And it depends on what is that community. Is it an immigrant population? Is it a native population? Is it different parts, different neighborhoods are creating different things? But if we reach out to these people, it gives us an opportunity to build the most inclusive, naturally inclusive community of business owners in a very purposeful way. It also allows us to build storefronts, and I mentioned this up front. So small-scale manufacturers are doing modern production. They're across every different kind of material, but they are doing production in a way that is quiet, is clean, is a great neighborhood. And in fact, in a neighborhood or a downtown or a main street that doesn't have very much foot traffic, they're amazing as the first ones in because they're already selling online and sometimes selling wholesale online already. So that they can fill a storefront and help draw foot traffic without being dependent on the foot traffic. And you know it's amazing to look through the window and see something being made. I mean, I'm always the one with my nose up against the window, but maybe that's just me. This woman has a soap shop. Her storefront, those are all the soaps that she's selling, but to the left of her, she has this huge cauldron where she can stir up her soaps, pour it into the molds, and do that production while she's also staffing her own store, which becomes a very efficient business model for people. And they help us increase our property value. So this is a coffee roasting company. They do the coffee shop up front, they do the roasting in the back, and wholesale gets shipped out the back door. Since they moved into this block, I would say, wow, at least 6 other shops that were vacant have been filled with different things because Zeke's is creating a foot traffic by being on this block. And it attracts more business owners. And you guys probably know this intuitively, but I want to make sure it's clear. When we take care of our own local business owners, small scale manufacturing or not, but when a city decides to take care of its own local business owners, word gets out. They actually talk to each other. It's shocking. But I will tell you, Knoxville, Tennessee, the mayor, who I think is now not mayor anymore, Mayor O'Hara, she did a lot to support maker businesses in the city. She created a mayor's maker council. She helped support a maker's summit. And the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center runs that programming for the mayor. They have a thriving community of producers. People I have met in Oregon and Ohio and in New Mexico know about what's going on in Knoxville. They've heard about it because they are producers in other parts of the country, and they've heard that the businesses in Knoxville are doing well. They're valued there. The city hasn't done that much. They've done some really key visible things, and they've helped really build a community of producers so that they can help each other more than invest millions of dollars like New York City has been able to do. So let's just be clear about who we're talking about. When I talk about small-scale manufacturing, obviously I'm talking about makerspaces. Makerspaces are a really important base to this conversation, right? Makerspaces, as you well know, have this opportunity to give us access to tools that most of us can't afford on our own. But they also offer this community, both to learn how to use the tools, but also to work with other people. Many makerspaces, in fact, at this point are adding workforce development program, as well as small business programming support, which is essential to their work. We also have shared commercial kitchen. Wood shops or shared textile spaces are looking at a specific vertical and saying we are only open to small business of that vertical, but we will provide you with access to the advanced tools you may not be able to afford on your own. A commercial shared kitchen is essential for a growing food business. Somebody might have been producing something at home. They want to be able to sell to Whole Foods. They need a commercial shared kitchen with that stamp from the health department to be able to package and produce that good and sell it more broadly. Most likely they will do that for a while before they can ever afford their own space. And we're seeing these all over the country. And I put this as part of our small-scale manufacturing. Food products are an essential part of what we're talking about in this and are an incredibly accessible business type. Then we have artisans, maker businesses. You pick a name, stick with it. Artisans, to me, are businesses that are 1 to 5 people. They're producing most of their goods by hand or with small tools. This is Katie Stack. I seem to talk about Katie all the time. She's a great friend. She has a shop in DC called Stitch and Rivet. You can find her online. She is in a micro storefront. She started in 400 square feet. She's now at 750 square feet. She does all of her production in that space and has a retail frontage. And she sells online, and she does wholesale, and she started to contract with some contract producers in Baltimore for a couple of her pieces, right? So we think of a business that has 4 employees and all of the impact that it has as it grows, and she's growing. Then we have businesses that are doing prototyping to small batch production. These might be businesses that are doing that contract production for somebody else. They might be prototyping hardware or in advanced manufacturing, but they're using all sorts of technology. Still modern, quiet, clean, great neighbors. That is a picture from Shinola. Great to know that Shinola is always in the story. They were small when they started. They started at 35 people, but they're not now. And then we have production at scale in the neighborhood. This is Cincinnati. This is Rhine Gas Brewery. I met them. They had been open for 2 years. They had been so successful in their first 2 years that they bought their building. It's not small. I think it's 120,000 square feet. And one of the things that they decided, honestly, I'm not sure if they did it in an explicit decision or more of an implicit just understanding what they needed to do, is they decided to keep the main building that they had, the production in the main building small and doing a lot of production in its sort of next building over, because they wanted to keep a huge open space for community activities. This was ping pong day when I was there. It was wiffle ball. I mean, there's just unbelievable places for the community to gather, and places for community gatherers is a really essential part of it. So, before I tell you what this looks like for a local economy, I want to just hit on that point of what does it mean for a community gathering. There's a great study called Soul of the Community. And it was done by the Knight Foundation many years ago. And it looked at small and medium-sized cities in the Midwest and in the South. And it looked at the question of why do people stay in the cities that they're in? And it found that it wasn't because of economic opportunity, it wasn't because of jobs. There were 3 factors. They felt included in that place. There were places to gather, hence the Rhine Guy's point. And there was some aesthetic beauty, some natural environment, physical environment, there was something beautiful about that place. And that was this was a multi-year analysis that they did. Now is what they found was the common denominator. And so when we think about those 3 secrets that I talked about before, place, unique, and social connections, it ties them all together, and it has to be a part of the economic development that we're doing, and the way that we are supporting small-scale manufacturers as they grow out of a makerspace, move into storefronts, and the ecosystem that we're supporting around them. So one of the projects I recently did was in Columbia, Missouri. It's called the Loop, the Business Loop. It's an old corridor that used to have some shops and some restaurants, and it was where families would go. This is where the University of Missouri also has Mizzou is based. Evidently, the downtown belongs to the students, and there's no real place for families to go because the downtown belongs to the students, which happens a lot in college towns. And I was brought in to really help them figure out how do we bring this corridor back to life, What should future development look like? And we know we want small-scale manufacturing to be a part of it. It was, a big question. And what we did, and this is what I do in every community, is we go out and we interview small-scale manufacturing business owners, one-person shop, multi-staff, the whole gamut, from all different kinds of population that live in the community. We have small group meetings with property owners, with people who are providing services to the small business community, and we had a public meeting that had a huge number of business owners come, and they had about 160 people in the room, and it was all because people wanted to believe in that corridor, and they agreed that small-scale manufacturing had something to do with it, and this was actually in a building that also had a makerspace that's about to open. In the meetings with small-scale manufacturers, we go and we interview them in their place of production. So this is a screen printing business. This is a couple that launched it. They picked a building in a neighborhood that had been vacant for a long time because they wanted to support that neighborhood. Right? So a lot of these business owners want to be a part of the neighborhood. And one of the things that was most interesting to me when we finished up our project was Carrie said, you have been talking to people I was happy to talk to, but I never would have talked to before. And one of the ways we talk about this always is the connectors, the faith leaders, different people in the community who are known and trusted in their community, who you have to sit down and have a cup of coffee with, so that you can earn their trust, and then they can help you connect with small-scale manufacturing business owners in that community. We made a recommendation that they open a small commercial shared kitchen, huge demand for it. We helped them figure out where on the corridor it might work. We suggested trying to lease the space instead of buy the space, because buying the space seemed like a really huge thing. They're going to have it open 9 months after we made the recommendation. I will tell you that is the fastest anybody's ever done that, but it's really fun to get to watch. So, the work that I do is really focused on bringing places back to life, or creating thriving places that might be building momentum, but not quite there and sustainable, or going into hot markets and saying, well, what about everybody else? What do we do in a hot market where people can't afford the space if they're a local product business? It's a public good. The businesses are creating all sorts of great benefits because they're creating living wage jobs. These small-scale manufacturing business owners, in general, are paying 50 to 100% more than a retailer service job. So why don't we see them as a public benefit? Why aren't we creating incentives to support this so that more people can build their own wealth by moving out of retail and service jobs? And they do help us create this thriving local community as part of it. When I work in places, I always talk about, are you ready to be done with that default model? How do we really move forward and make sure that people value a place, find that uniqueness? And small-scale manufacturing is obviously the way there, and connect with people. We work with people directly and really is focused on getting action in a community in the short term. Not what are we going to do 3 years from now, but what are we going to do in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months. And I do 2 major things. I do an online masterclass for folks who want to work on that implementation. There's 2 online cohorts a year. It's all on Zoom. And it's really exciting and fun to get to work with people that way, and we also bring that training to people on the road. And then we also have an on-site project, which is what I did with Columbia, Missouri, which is doing that deep community engagement directly, and then the coaching to implement it afterwards. So we do have a newsletter, if anybody is interested in following along, or just connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can email me if you have other questions. I'll certainly be here for a while. But I think it's important to remember in all of this that there's a reason why we do this, right? There's a reason you guys are here. There's a reason makerspaces feel like such an important piece and are such an important piece of what we're doing. And there's a reason that manufacturing and engaging with the owners of those businesses is so essential. It's because they're investing in our community. Right? They're making places that we love to be, that make us feel proud of it. And they're showing how proud they are to be the business owners in our community and create jobs that do employ people in our neighborhoods and our neighbors, honestly. And we need the political leadership to make that happen, right? We need to advocate for those changes. but we also need to ground truth what those changes need to be by working with the business owners directly so that we can make great places that people are proud to call home. And honestly, that's why I do this work. So with that, I thank you very much, and I can't wait to talk to you more.